Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small, a podcast about brand development, entrepreneurship, and innovation in the modern world. In this episode, I'm joined by Kevin Wohlman, founder of Southern Scholar. While working in the corporate tax world, Kevin realized the issue of typical socks sliding down the leg and not holding up. Realizing this issue, Kevin was inspired to create Southern Scholar as it is today. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today, I'm joined by Kevin Wohlman of Southern Scholar. Kevin, thank you so much for joining me today.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I want to start out with your upbringing. So where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
All right, let's see. Getting right in there. I was born in Mammoth, California. It's a very small kind of mountain town in California. Was there until I was about 8, and then family moved to Scottsdale, Arizona. So just polar opposites here, larger city, much warmer, obviously. Dad was just kind of tired of shoveling snow. But lived a pretty, I guess you'd say cookie cutter kind of suburban life growing up. Played sports and, ran around playing roller hockey with the neighborhood kids and stuff like that. So pretty normal little upbringing.
Gotcha. Did you ever have an entrepreneurship mindset growing up, say a lemonade stand or selling your products?
I did. Let's see. I've got quite a few. When I was probably in 4th or 5th grade, I used to save all my Halloween candy after Halloween and save wait a couple of months until all the other kids had run out of theirs.
Yeah.
And then I would bring it to school and sell it each day. And I loved this story, especially when starting to do podcasts and whatnot, because it was a little bit more unique than a lot of people's, lemonade stand story.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was listening to How I Built This by Guy Raz.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't remember who it was, but a very famous entrepreneur had like the exact same story. And all I could think when I heard it is, wow, every time somebody hears me say that, they're just going to think I ripped it off of this guy.
Yeah. That's great. So what did the school say about that whenever you would do that? Would they care?
I think I was a little bit sneakier with it, but I also think, back then things weren't as strict. There wasn't this huge, issue of bringing outside food and stuff like that. But I obviously wasn't doing it like on a scale where it would be noticeable either, just kind of bringing it into the lunchroom and the word of mouth would spread that, Kevin's got Sour Patch Kids. Next thing I know, I got a little line formed. But it wasn't, on any sort of scale where I'm like standing next to the cafeteria lines with a booth or anything like that.
Yeah, gotcha. That's great. So in 2003, I saw you went to Arizona State University. What did you study there?
2003, man, I was still in high school in 2003, or I wasn't even in high school in 2003.
Wait, your LinkedIn says 2003 you began at Arizona State, I believe.
Oh, wow. I was really smart at a young age. No, I didn't get to ASU until 2010.
2010, okay.
Yeah, so I graduated high school in 2009, went to ASU in the summer of 09-10, and did 4 years as an accounting major, knowing that I had no interest in doing accounting full time. I had gotten into the business school, or the undergraduate business school, I should say, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do for my major. My first choice was, back then, it was a management degree, business management, with a focus in entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. And my dad, ironically, who has owned his own business most of his life, kind of steered me away from it. Okay. Just kind of saying, what are you going to learn in a management, role or management major? What kind of, industry can you go into with that? What kind of job can you go going into that? And I couldn't really answer that question for him. Even with a focus in entrepreneurship, it was like, I was like, I'll just start my own business. And he goes, all right, in what? What do you have experience in? What are you going to start a business in? What industries have you learned? What industries do you understand? And per usual, I was like, all right, my dad's making a lot of sense here. So I ended up getting a internship with a Big Four accounting firm after my freshman year. No, it would have been after my sophomore year. And when I came back to school, I had changed my major to accounting, not because I loved the work, but because I was 19 years old getting paid $25 an hour and time and a half for overtime. So I was going back to school with a lot of money, and all I could think is like, oh man, accounting pays well and I understand it. I'm good enough at it. Maybe I'll just do that.
Yes.
So I decided to go with accounting, but I did take entrepreneurship classes for the majority of my, I guess you'd say, electives.
Mm-hmm.
And then I interned at that company my sophomore summer, junior summer, and senior summer. And typical route would have been for me to go back to school for one more year, get a master's in tax or audit, and then go back and start at the firm full time. So I did accept the offer at the firm to return full time, even though it wasn't really what I wanted to do. It was kind of like a safety net.
Yeah.
But rather than going back to school and getting that master's in tax, I went back and at that point, the management entrepreneurship degree, management with a focus on entrepreneurship, had switched into separate degrees. So there was now an actual major degree in entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And it actually just switched the summer before I went back. So I was the first and only 2014 graduate of the entrepreneurship school. In the graduation book, it lists out all the majors and the names underneath, and I'm the only one under that name. So it's kind of funny.
That is.
But I had taken enough of those entrepreneurship classes through my undergrad, or my first degree in undergrad, that I was only a few credits away from the major itself. So that was kind of a nice little leisurely fifth year to get that second degree and actually learn far more in that 1 year than I did in my previous 4, simply because I was just far more interested in the information I was being taught.
For sure. So with your time at Arizona State, were you involved with any athletics or clubs outside the entrepreneurship program?
So after middle school and the whole little candy selling and whatnot, I did a few other things. And then in high school, I believe I was 14 or 15, I started a t-shirt company. And I kind of ran that through my sophomore year of college. But once I got to college, I'd kind of pivoted out of my own like brand and designs into doing shirts for, fraternities and sororities and musicians and clubs and intramural teams and things like that. So I was kind of involved in that way. I also did join a fraternity when I was a freshman and ended up getting kicked off campus, basically for partying. And so me and my pledge class, about, probably 12 guys, very hands-on, 25 guys in total, we actually turned around and started our own fraternity, and went through all the hoops that involves with nationals and all that, and kind of getting a house set up. And so that was kind of a full-time gig while in school, was kind of getting that thing up and running.
Gotcha. So what was your overall experience like at Arizona State? Was it pretty good, fairly, for yourself?
I'd go back tomorrow if I could.
Yeah, totally. So prior to Southern Scholar, what kinds of jobs were you working out of college then? You said you accepted the tax job. Were there any other opportunities?
Yeah. So when I was doing that entrepreneurship degree, I just couldn't kind of get the idea. And I always knew I wanted to start my own business. From a very, very young age, I really didn't think I would work for anybody for any extended period of time. But anything kind of fell into my lap just because, kind of the situation I explained. I got that internship at a young age, and my dad had kind of pushed me away from the entrepreneurship degree to start. So I started during that 5th year, just kind of spitballing different ideas and thinking about what I could get into. And I had a few concepts, but I thought that I would kind of take the advice of my dad and kind of go learn an industry or several. And I was trying to think what the easiest way to use kind of my skill set and the things I'm interested in and learn several industries at a time to see where, what I kind of love to do and where I fit in. And so I started applying for management consulting jobs, thinking that might be a good step. Unfortunately, I didn't get any of those jobs. Arizona State pedigree didn't quite stand up to the Yale and Harvard students that were applying.
Yeah.
So I ended up accepting that accounting job. I'd already accepted it. I ended up going to do that in July of 14. And I was there about 8 weeks, maybe a little bit less, when I decided I was going to start my own thing.
Gotcha.
So aside from a few, bar jobs in college and running a very small t-shirt line, I didn't have any experience. 3 internships at an accounting firm with no accounting background and minimal accounting classes. So doing, very kind of Excel-based, hands-off, nothing technical work.
Yeah.
I had essentially zero experience in anything, if I'm being blunt.
Gotcha. So in 2014, this is when Southern Scholar came about. And
yes.
Yeah. What were you saying?
Yeah. So I was sitting in the office, basically looking around and kind of pondering how I could get out of that office.
Yeah.
And I just noticed, man, everybody in my office, from interns to, your 55-year-old partners, they were all, for the most part, wearing some sort of pattern dress look. And I was, excuse me, I was as well. What I noticed for me was I used to walk to work. I lived just under a mile away
Okay.
in downtown Dallas. And by the time I would get, 15 steps out my door, my socks are down at my ankle.
Mm.
By the time I would get to the office and back in the afternoon and take my shoes off, my socks are, ridden with holes. They're soaked from sweat. They're just not working out for me.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed some of the other guys in the office constantly were kind of stopping, bending down, pulling their socks back up. I noticed a lot of the younger guys were wearing socks that I wouldn't deem office appropriate. Kind of, orange, white, and gray camouflage. And
Yeah.
then on the other side, I noticed that a lot of the guys that were wearing these kind of more, loud novelty style socks, they didn't have any concept of how to kind of match it to the rest of their outfit.
Mm-hmm.
So they might be wearing a black slack, black shoe, and a white shirt, and then they've got this like just super contrasted orange and purple pair of socks on that just didn't go.
Yeah.
So I started thinking, what if I could come up with a line of dress socks that fit well, was comfortable, didn't fall down your leg all day, and then also offered styles that were unique but professional, that were office appropriate but still had a little bit of style to them, a little bit of personality.
Mm-hmm.
And then what if I could also provide kind of some style know-how with each pair? So kind of we do what's called a style card that shows you on one side and then tells you on the other exactly what to wear with that pair of socks from head to toe, in both the business casual and a business professional atmosphere.
Gotcha. So did you outsource production for the first prototype, or you weren't making this in-house, were you?
No, which is really funny when I tell people, if I'm out at a bar or restaurant and someone asks what I do, and I tell them that I own a dress sock company, and they'll turn around to the friends and be like, "Oh, this guy sells socks, or you make socks," and I'll have one of their friends chime in and be like, "You like knit socks?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm just sitting in my house all day knitting socks."
Oh man.
No, man. So we started off, and I reached out to probably right off the bat, probably about 30 different manufacturers all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Got all their samples in, and kind of tested out each one day to day, kind of see what I liked, what I didn't, and then I would kind of cross-reference the material blends that we were using with each one and the quality of the manufacturer itself, until we slowly kind of got to narrow down on some of the materials that we really liked and at what percentages in the blend, and which suppliers were just clearly higher quality control or higher quality in general, and just kind of kept going that way. I mean, to date, we've probably sampled with 60 to 75 different suppliers and hundreds of material blends. And our socks themselves have been reiterated over and over and over the past 6 years.
Yeah. Did you acquire any funding, say, for your first production round then?
Yeah, so it's a relatively long story. I don't want to get too far into, but I did end up bringing, a few months in, I brought in one of my buddies as a silent investor, very small amount of capital, but just enough to kind of what I thought could get us to launch, basically first round of product, and all that kind of stuff. And then we were supposed to have a second, I wouldn't not even close to a round, but a second supply of funding from him, another small amount right after launch that was going to be meant for starting advertising costs, essentially. That ended up kind of falling apart, and kind of went out the window. So I think the day that I launched the company, we had about $850 in the account. Hadn't put a dime into marketing. That was all kind of product, set up, all the kind of the admin stuff that has to be taken care of.
Totally.
And yeah, so it was a pretty risky move. I ended up getting, essentially buying him out, getting the company launched on the 15th of November of 2015 with basically the goal of getting it out there right before the holidays. We had no advertising budget. We had no capital. We had, again, $800 and something in the account. I thought if we don't get this launched before peak season, we're gonna be in some trouble here. So was able to I quit my job. Like I said, I started early July of 14. I started working on this late July, early August, kind of nights and weekends, for the next year. And I actually quit that job at the accounting firm on my 1 year anniversary. I think I quit on the end of July. I went to Vegas that weekend, had 3 days to kind of wind down, have some fun. And then Monday morning, landed in Dallas and started my day full time for myself, and the rest is pretty much history.
That's awesome. So from that first launch, how many sock selections did you have from the start then?
All right. So our biggest issue with having no capital to go towards marketing was how are we going to get, so I don't even think I've mentioned this yet. When Southern Scholar first started, and this is how it ran for the first, 3.5, 4 years,
Mhm.
we were 100% subscription based.
Okay.
We did not sell one-off e-commerce. The only way you could buy individual pairs is if you were a member of our Stock of the Month club. You could log into your subscription account. You could access our kind of shop, and you could shop previous styles and add on extra pairs each month and whatnot. But if you were not a member of that Sock of the Month club, you could not get our socks. And at the time when I thought of this whole subscription sock concept when I was back at PwC and kind of getting this idea off the ground, I thought that I was the most innovative person in the world. I was like, Dollar Shave Club's taking off, and all these other companies are doing, these subscriptions, and like, why not socks? Like,
Yeah.
business people have to wear socks every day. Like, why not socks? Like, nobody's doing that. And I got home that night and started Googling and was like, oh, a lot of people are doing that. There are so many sock subscriptions out there, but I wasn't at all deterred because I was wondering, why have I not heard of these companies? I'm obviously their demographic, their target market. They're obviously doing something wrong.
Mhm.
If I haven't heard of this whole sock subscription concept, they're not marketing correctly. And I'm kind of sitting there thinking like, this is going to be, open season. I'm going to clean up here. Just having no experience, no knowledge, no understanding of the competitive landscape of digital marketing at the time. I'm thinking this is going to be a cakewalk. In year one, we're going to hit $1 million
Yeah, totally.
and be off to the races. And yeah, as you can kind of tell where the story's going, that was not the case. I learned very quickly that I knew absolutely nothing about this industry, and it was going to be a long run. But I think that's a long-winded half answer to your question, was how many socks did we start with?
Yeah.
So with dress socks there, and with any textile really, there's a minimum order quantity that needs to be hit. And I knew with no capital to put towards marketing, we weren't going to hit that MOQ for each month. And obviously each month had to be a different style because our members couldn't get the same style month after month after month. So what I ended up doing is basically creating a good enough relationship with our supplier at the time and convincing them to drop the MOQ to 500 pairs per style.
Mhm.
If I bought a year's worth at a time. So I started off with, I think, 10 to 12 styles at 500 a piece, and was able to kind of fill out our inventory for the first year.
So were these like sitting in your home and then you would ship them out then? The 500 orders of 16 textiles, were these like
Well, again, we didn't have right off the bat 500 subscribers.
Yeah.
So like month one, and forgive my memory, I want to say at the end of month one, we had just over 120 subscribers.
Okay.
So that means I've got 380 pairs of that style left over.
Yeah.
So that's when the idea of like, oh, let's start up this little members shop and we can throw in our previous ones in there. And as more people sign up that missed out on the November 2015 sock because they signed up in January of 16, they can go back and buy that one.
Mm.
And obviously that's not going to move those socks all too quickly, but yes, they were sitting in boxes, floor to ceiling, wall to wall of my apartment bedroom at the time.
Mm.
I had a bed in the middle, a tiny desk on the left side, and then the other two walls, floor to ceiling, were these cardboard boxes filled with what is that, 5,000, 6,000 pairs of socks.
Yeah, yeah. So how were you able to get rid of that inventory then? Like how long did that take as well?
If I'm being honest, I still probably have a few hundred of them sitting in my closet as we speak.
Yeah.
Because shortly after, and again, our first run was very high quality, very nice. Our customers absolutely loved them.
Mm-hmm.
But slowly but surely, I learned more about textiles and manufacturing, and was able to kind of improve upon that product. And really what pushed me to do that, and I don't get into this all too often, is another company, actually local here, had ordered a few pairs of our socks and basically ripped off our material blend and launched a new business collection, basically, with our line. And so, most people, or maybe not most, but a lot of people would kind of, what do I do here? Where do I even start? They just stole our blend. They're trying to compete with us. They were around before us, yada, yada. I didn't kind of sit there and sulk. I was more flattered than anything. But I I just kind of turned around and started researching and seeing what I could do, and ended up iterating on those original socks and making them far, far better. And at that point, when you have a good product and a great product, you don't even want to sell the good product.
Yeah. Sure.
And I still, to this day, 6 years later, I guess 5 years since launch coming up here, I still like almost consider my name on every single pair that goes out. So as soon as we got those higher quality socks, we kind of donated the bulk of our previous runs and just completely switched over.
Gotcha.
And then since then, I mean, we've iterated again 2 or 3 times. We've switched suppliers to kind of higher quality suppliers, and most recently, I think we've had about the same iteration, essentially, with a few tweaks, and the same supplier for the last like 3.5 years. We've kind of finally found that one supplier that is just bar none levels above all the others. We just have a really good relationship with them. But I did hold on to about 100 of each of those 10 styles. We donated the rest, and the other ones I kept in my closet, and kind of in the hopes that one day I can do something with them as kind of a memory of kind of where we came from, kind of frame one of each, or give them out to some of our original customers that are still with us, or something like that. But yeah, we still have a few of those, and we donated the rest. We certainly did not offhand all of them.
Gotcha. So with such a low or even no marketing budget, then how were you advertising at this time?
Essentially organic social media and word of mouth.
Okay.
We didn't even really do email at the time, regrettably, now that I know kind of the power of it. But my mentality was like, we don't have enough money to be, I mean, we weren't even doing PPC ads. We weren't running any Facebook ads, any Google, until the end of like year 3. And so my thought process on email, aside from, our monthly members, we emailed them a little bit about sales and going to buy more out of the shop and things like that. I just didn't think that it was going to be worth it, because it was going to be such a slow start to building a list. When you're not sending a ton of traffic from, these paid mediums, it's very hard to build a list. So it was really word of mouth and organic social. And to be frank, I don't even really know if our organic social strategy back then was working all too well. We did a lot of the no-nos that people know now. We did a follow unfollow service with a bot. And, at the time it was like, oh, we're growing, 2,500 followers a month. This is crazy. This is awesome. And then all of a sudden, after 3 or 4 months, you see your engagement just tank, and you realize, we messed up.
Yeah, for real. The algorithm's crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, our first 3 years were essentially word of mouth. We didn't really have the budget nor the know-how to do anything else. And surprisingly, it worked well enough to kind of get us to where we are now.
For sure. So looking at Southern Scholar today, what would you say separates Southern Scholar from your competitors then?
Oh man, everything.
Yeah.
Our blend is just levels above anything else in the market. We don't use any cotton or wool. Cotton's been the long time kind of favorite for socks, and there's a lot of kind of marketing language around all these new different variations of cotton, and your bamboo and your this and that. And at the end of the day, cotton is not the choice fabric for anything that has to form fit. There's a reason why 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever it was, you stopped seeing guys show up to the gym in cotton t-shirts, and everything went to these performance fabrics that are, polyester, rayon based from Under Armour and Nike and all that. If you put on a cotton t-shirt, just your standard Hanes cotton t-shirt, or, any graphic shirt that kids wore in the 90s, put that shirt on, yank on the collar a little bit, and see if it goes back to where it was, or if it hangs, if it stays hanging. I think Hanes even did a commercial on this with Michael Jordan years ago called like Bacon Neck.
I don't think I've seen it.
Where basically the crew neck kind of gets wavy, and it's not kind of in the shape that it's meant to be, because cotton has very poor shape retention. It has very poor elasticity. So when you're trying to take a sock or anything that has to kind of form fit around a body part and hold tight, what's going to happen when you use cotton or wool for that matter, is every time you, every time you pull it over your sock or over your leg, that fabric's going to kind of dwindle a little bit and loosen a little bit and loosen a little bit. And that's what causes the original kind of drooping and falling down your leg. That's what makes that kind of space in between the leg and the sock after a few wears, when you bend your ankle and you've got this like like curl over on the bottom of the sock. It's
Mhm.
it's just not the fabric. It's not the choice fabric yet. Everybody uses it because it's dirt cheap. It's easy to source. Every manufacturer works with it. There's no minimum order quantities on color dyeing because everybody uses it. So it's always at hand. And we run into a lot of sourcing issues and a lot of kind of minimum issues and all that, just because the materials that we use are not super readily available in every color possible. So we have to spin dye everything. We have to kind of cover certain minimum order quantities on fabrics alone. A lot of the time, if we're not going to be producing that many styles in that color, we'll have to buy that fabric color anyway and just kind of store it until we do.
Yeah.
So from a cash flow perspective and inventory perspective, it does become a nightmare. Or sorry, from a supply chain perspective, it does become kind of a nightmare. But when the product quality is that superior, it makes it far, far worth it.
Totally. So is Southern Scholar today, is it 100% e-commerce, or are you in any retail or no?
Yeah, so we do a little bit of retail. It's certainly not our focus.
For sure.
But specialty menswear shops, golf courses, country clubs, pro shops, things like that, we certainly do. And this coming year, we'll probably explore that opportunity a lot more. We've had a lot of people reach out to us about it, and leading into Q4 here, it's not been my focus is certainly on the e-commerce side. But about a year and a half ago, I want to say we introduced it in July of 19 and kind of started marketing it in February of 20. So just about 8 months ago. Yeah. We went from a full subscription to open e-commerce, and we've kind of switched our focus. We still have our subscription. We'll always maintain that subscription. We still have, a lot of people on that and people that love that offering. But we do now offer the ability to go and purchase our socks without a monthly subscription. It is at a higher price point. If you are a member, you get members pricing, but that's kind of proven to be far more successful. I think with the number of people out there that are just obsessed with socks and obsessed with, style and menswear and the way they look, like you would be surprised. We have people go in and, spend $300 at a time on socks.
Wow.
And then return 2 weeks later when we launch 6 new styles and buy all those. And so giving people the option to kind of stock up, pick your own styles, get as many as you want at a time versus, get the one pair a month that we design and send out. That's kind of been a huge game changer for us, giving those two options.
Totally. So something I noticed on your website is you respond to all customer concerns. And I think I really respect that, and has a lot of intimacy with your new brand. I was wondering, what does your day-to-day look like? Do you work morning through night then, like responding to these emails, or do you set a time to respond, or what does that look like?
Man, it kind of depends on the day.
Yeah,
I'm a huge believer in the fact that customer support is the last thing you should outsource or push down to another employee. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter who it is. Nobody is going to take care of your customers the way that you are. Nobody's going to care about the business the way that you do. So that kind of goes back to what I said earlier, where every time we send out a pair of socks, I almost feel like my name is on it, because if somebody responds and says, hey, there was a default, or there's a fault with my sock, or it was, it didn't fit right, or there's this, or there's a hole in it, or whatever. I'm the one responding and apologizing for that issue and explaining to them, this is certainly not the norm. Let me send you, another couple pairs on the house. Get this out first thing in the morning. We'll send it priority shipping, whatever we can do to kind of make that poor experience turn into a good one. And I think that's a huge reason why we were able to kind of grow with the word of mouth side. For the first 4 years, and I'm kind of embarrassed to tell you that I haven't looked at it recently, just because the subscription side has become kind of a secondary focus. But for the first 4 years, we had a 4% churn rate month over month, which is just legendary for the subscription space. It's generally 18% plus. Very successful companies keep it around 8 or 9. But we're retaining 96% of our customers month after month, and that speaks to the quality of our product, but also to the customer service side. When I'm handling anybody's issue or concern, or even the one responding when somebody just wants to tell us how much they love the socks, it does create that kind of community. It does make people feel heard and appreciated. And it just goes a very long way. I want to say that it was Carrie over at Taft that said in a podcast I heard once that customer service will be the last thing that he ever outsources. And I have a great admiration for them and what they've done over at Taft. And so that kind of stood, kind of stuck in my heart, and I already kind of felt that way. But it does, to your point, it does create some inefficiencies day to day.
Yeah.
Because I try to not, just sit there and refresh inboxes and I try and keep my phone face down while it's playing a podcast or music, whatever I'm listening to. So I'm not getting distracted by the screen lighting up or whatever.
Yeah.
But there are certainly times where I'm in the middle of, doing something, trying to get a task done, trying to get some ads run, trying to get something, going. And I go to my second screen where my email is, and it refreshes, and I see a customer email, and I can tell from the first line, like, oh, they're not happy.
Yeah.
And I will just kind of stop what I'm doing and respond to them. And kind of, I want to make sure that they're heard and responded to as quickly as possible, so that they're not sitting there wondering if we're just another one of those companies that takes 3 days to respond or doesn't respond at all. And it certainly does cause some inefficiencies in those processes. And I try and do my best to minimize the back and forth. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely nights where, I'm getting in bed at midnight, 1 or 2 in the morning, and a customer email comes in, and I'll respond right away. And it kind of shows them a lot, shows that we care, shows that we appreciate their business.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, there's other days where I've had a long one and I just kind of put the phone away, at 9 o'clock, and I don't look at it till the morning. There's not really anything, consistent or any certain, daily plan. Every day is different. And I think that's kind of the beauty of entrepreneurship.
For sure. So I conclude each episode with this. If you could share one piece of advice with an aspiring entrepreneur, maybe something you've regret or you've learned, what would that be?
I'll give you 2.
Okay.
Something that I've learned is that the digital landscape is not what any outsider thinks. I still to this day have friends that are just like, they think that you have a product, you throw it up on some Facebook ads, and you're just making millions of dollars off the bat.
Yeah.
So what I would say is, number 1, focus on the product. Make sure that your product is better or different. Ideally better because it's different than anything else on the market. I think it might have been, was it Nate in one of your most recent episodes that said there's 2 sides to a business. It's making a great product and being able to sell that great product. I think
Nate from Roan.
Yeah.
I
think it was him.
Yep.
I think in today's world, so many companies focus so much more on how are we going to sell this product than the product itself. And in my opinion, it should really be a 60-40. You've got to have that phenomenal product before you go and sell it, because how are you going to have a shitty product, excuse my language, and go and run an ad that says like, oh, we make the best this and we're so great and you need to try us and da-da-da. Like, how can you feel honest when you're doing that, right? So first off, what I would say is focus on the product before you focus on selling the product. If the product is as good as you say it is, it'll not sell itself, but you'll have a much better time doing that. And sorry, what was I said I had 2 here and I'm drawing a blank. What I regret. I'm very much the type of person who is open about what I know and don't know, unless I feel like I should know it. Then I hesitate to admit that I don't. And I think that that's held me back as an individual and an entrepreneur in my life. If I'm, talking with somebody who is far more knowledgeable than I am in the e-commerce space, the digital marketing space, or the textile space, and they say something and I don't quite understand it, but I kind of think to myself that I should. And if I admit to them that I don't, they're going to think I don't know anything about anything. That was my mentality when I first kind of got into this space. And again, I was young. I was 22 or 23 years old when I started this business. So if I'm talking to a 30-year-old that's been in this space forever, I may not be as hesitant to say, hey, can you explain that to me? I didn't quite catch that. Or do you mind going over that with me? But if I'm talking to somebody who's my age, who's, I guess, quote unquote, farther ahead of me, I was almost afraid to ask those questions. I didn't want them to think like, oh, this kid doesn't know anything.
Yeah, for sure.
But at the end of the day, that fear of like pretending to know things you don't is going to hold you back so far. And asking those questions and admitting what you don't know and wanting to learn what you don't know, that's going to just propel you forward.
For sure. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for joining me. And to the listeners out there, make sure to check out Southern Scholar at southernscholar.com.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for listening to this episode of Starting Small. If you would, leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. Also, follow Starting Small Pod on social platforms to keep up to date on future guests.